Well, welcome to Product of the Working Class, and it's my great pleasure to introduce a really good friend of mine, Brett Stepto, from the band, formerly of the band Even Nine. Evening, Brett. How you doing, buddy?
Evening, how you doing?
Mate, I'm really well. Thank you very much for asking. It's all good,
Thanks for
all
having
good.
me. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. And yeah, so what have you been up to, fella, in the last little bit of while, considering with all the COVID stuff that's going on?
It's been a tough time, right? Really tough for everyone. Um, Luckily, I think because I've got amazing gear behind me and I did a conversion with some drums, I was able to use lockdown to just express myself musically by playing drum covers, because we were isolated, we couldn't go out. So I stayed home, bought some software and went onto YouTube and just jammed along to music, and it was really good. It was really good to find a different way of playing as well, because you're taking click tracks out of music and you're taking the drums out and you're learning to play along with music that's not got any pulse. So you're having to find that pulse. So it was a good lesson as well. Some good drumming tips for anyone wanting to move forward. Get
That,
some drumless tracks and just play along.
yeah, that's really cool, mate. I've seen a couple of your videos actually you posted, and there's some of them are awesome. I remember seeing one. You did a Blondie track, and you were wearing a wig like Deborah Harry, which cracked me up when I saw that. And then I saw another one of yours, which was a cover of 45 Sound by Gaslight Anthem, which I absolutely loved. I mean, I love the band, but I love
What
that
a tune.
song. And mate, you kick some ass on it.
Oh, thank you. It's just one of those songs. It just moves, isn't it? It's no ball with it. It's just a solid, fat groove. And as long as you lock into it, it's one of those songs you can just lose yourself in and just find that pulse and just play along and enjoy it. And it came out well. I think it's that half of the beauty is trying to get the audio, using finding the kits on the module to match the original sound. And if you get it right, they can come out pretty well. And that was one of the good ones. Really good. Enjoyed it.
Well, looking at the traffic and attention that it certainly got on Facebook and everything, mate. Yeah, it did very well. And didn't I see that even the drummer from Gaslight got in touch with you to congratulate you on what a great
I
job
know,
you've
man.
done?
How cool is that? Benny, he was just like, I had a notification come up and it's like, Benny Horowitz is like, hang on a minute. And he's like, yeah, he gave me some proper kudos and he said he really enjoyed it, which is, how cool is that? Amazing.
Mate, that's rock and roll. A nod in the right direction, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Right, dude. So really, what I want to kind of talk to you about tonight is how you got into your drums. When you started, how old were you? We'll talk about your kit preferences and gear that
Cool.
you like, and just generally have a good old chinwag about your life in drums, really.
Brilliant. It's exciting, isn't it? You can just reminisce and just go back over time and just have a chat and just all these things will start coming out. And so I was probably seven, I think, probably 1982. And I was a little kid watching the Muppet Show. And there's this blonde woman that was been interviewed by Miss Piggy. And I was like, yeah, infatuation you get as a little kid when you see someone, not Miss Piggy. This was the blonde woman. And it was Debbie Harry from Blondie, and I was just like blown away. It was just I don't know what it was. It's one of those kid things, but I think she was having a chat, and then she did a version of Denis Denis, and they showed the video, and it was just something. It just struck the music, the sound. I think Clem Burt was playing a red Premiere kit, and something stuck in me. Then it wasn't then when I thought, oh, I want to play drums, but it was then when I think I first discovered music, and I didn't know what it was, I didn't know what to make of it. It was just cool. And then from there on, I think I got some LPs and some vinyl from my family. And then maybe Madonna came on the scene and I was like listening to this kind of music, and it was still just about the music and pretty girls, which from a 7-year-old was really sad. But yeah, just the infatuation thing we go through, right? But so then, that went on. And then probably by the age of 10 or 11, I think I probably moved up to comprehensive school. And in my tutor group, there's this real cool guy. And he sat in the corner and he had an Iron Maiden t-shirt on and he had long hair. And he was a real cool dude. And he was listening to his stereo and his headphones on. And I went over to him and I said, man, what are you listening to? And he goes, oh, check this out. I'm listening to listening to Bon Jovi, Slippery and Wet, and I was like, what's all that then? You know, what is it? And he played me this song, and it was Living on a Prayer, and I'll never forget it. I just sit there and I put these headphones on, and I could just hear Tico, you know, and I think that was the moment I connected, and all these other things were happening around the time. The music block was in the playground, and there was these guys, and the drums were, you could hear them at lunch, you know, at lunchtime walking past, and there's a little hole in the window, and I look at this little red Premiere kit, and all these dudes are playing drums, and I was listening to Slippery and Wet, and everything just kind of connected, you know. And a friend of mine invited me in to play drums for the first time, and I remember sitting behind a kit, and it was so surreal because I didn't know what to do. I just had a pair of drumsticks, and I'm like, I was turned into, you know, I thought I was going to cool dude. I was just like, yeah. And then and this girl that I've been chasing, she at the same time as I sat down and started playing drums, she came in with all her mates to ask me out, and it was like one of those moments of like, I'm going to play drums, you know, this is the coolest thing in the world. And it was just, I think from then on, I think it was just an infectious kind of thing where I wanted to go home every night. I got knitting needles out, mother's cake tins, and I was listening to Tico play, and that was it. I was probably 12 to 1987, 88, something like that. And that's really how the journey began for me, you know, and it was just good times, magic times.
I think anyone who has grown up in that era and was lucky enough to be just beginning to get influenced by music, you know, in that 80s
Yeah, of
period,
course.
mate, I tell you what, it was just so rich in bands. You know, I mean, we're same age, so for me, hearing, you know, Def Leppard, I remember seeing them on Top of the Pops playing Animal, and it was like, what is that? And I
I
couldn't get
know.
enough of it, mate. And
The,
I
the,
remember, and
sorry,
I
I was just saying it.
go on.
Go on.
No, you carry
After
on,
you.
bud.
I was going to say the thing is, back then, to have access to music, it was like kids nowadays. You know, you pick up a smartphone and you've got YouTube, you've got any access to social media to find anything you want to listen to. But back then, for us, we had Top of the Pops, we had your top 40 on the radio. You know, that you'd listen to in your bedroom to
Yeah,
hear music. You know, it wasn't easy to hear music back then or to read about music, and you know how times have changed. So yeah, music back then was so precious because you would have to save up your pocket money to go and buy yourself a cassette tape, you know, things like
but
that. It's just we take it for granted nowadays, but back then it was precious
yeah,
times.
I think you're right, and it's interesting you saying that because I was talking to Shutty, the drummer from Terrorvision, a few weeks ago, and he was saying to me, he was saying to me about the whole listening posts in Our Price, or you know, we didn't have an Our Price in Cornwall. The nearest one was in Exeter, but you know, you go in and you would be able to listen to something, but you'd have to take a punt or really be invested with that 5-6 quid on that album. You know, and like you said, you couldn't just go and stream it and decide whether you liked it or not. It was an investment. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'll remember this as well, when your mate might have an album and they'll go, "Oh yeah, will that fit on the side of a C90 cassette?" And
Yeah, yeah,
you'll be at home recording it, you know, because it's the only way you could get new music.
sure, sure. I know. And nowadays, you know, you can just stream a song. You can just flick through YouTube and play a 5 second snippet. I don't like that, and you just move on. Like, you know, crazy how. And it wasn't really that long ago, although it is. You know, we're talking 25, 30 years maybe, but how things have changed. And for me as a drummer, it was the VHS videos, you know, of like your clinicians that I remember. I remember a video that I got for Christmas, and it was a concert of like Weckl and Vinnie Colaiuta, Billy Cobham, and there's this guy called Billy Ward, and you know, your Vinnie Colaiutas and your Dave Weckls, they sit there and you're just like, what? That's ridiculous, you know, amazing how these guys are playing all these notes, but it never made me move though. You know, I was always blown away by it. It was always so amazing to watch. But this guy Billy Ward came on, and he was a porky guy, and he had a Peaky Blinders cap on and a goatee and a bit of a pot belly, and he had this little tiny kit, you know, 4-piece kit, a couple of cymbals, and he sat down. He just started playing this groove, you know, and I remember thinking, I'm doing this, you know, and Weckl didn't make me do that, but this guy Billy Ward did it, and he had a conversation after with the audience, and he was talking about what, you know, his approach to drumming, and he come up with this line. He says, learn to love the space between the notes as much as the notes themselves. Learn to play the space between the notes. And what I got from that was, he was playing and he was dropping kick drum notes. And when you're dropping those notes, that's what's making you move. And I think I had Tico from Bon Jovi, and then suddenly I had this Billy Ward guy who was teaching me, and I was trying to mold my way into what sort of style, and not really realizing, because I was still quite young. I was probably 14 or 15, and I wasn't really a great drummer. I was just someone trying to find my way. And as much as I was blown away by your Weckels and your Vinnie Colaiutas, I think that I take so much from that sentence that guy Billy Ward came out, and I never really followed him after that, but just to see him sit there and groove, and I'd go away and I'd play a dum ka dum, and then I'd take the bass drum notes out, and go dum ka those things, and I was like, that's grooving, man. That's to me is what playing drums is about. So I think I followed that path that Tico Torres and Billy Ward as a young kid probably taught me my little path, how I wanted to proceed and to serve the songs musically from the drummer's point of view, and know when to put the notes in, as opposed to trying to be, I've got my kit behind me for doing the flash stuff in my own time, but as a musician I just wanted to come out there and take something from that sentence and take it forward. And hopefully that's what I've done really over the years. I think that's how I get off of my instrument, and what moves me, if you like.
Yeah, and I think when I've listened to when I've listened to some of your Even Nine albums and things, there's a song on one of the songs I absolutely love this track, and it's the first track on your second album, which is called This Parade. And mate, I just love the way that snare just kicks in, and it just feels like it's going to take off, and I just love it. I mean, I've listened to that album a lot.
Oh, bless you.
No, and I mean it, and I just love. I'm not saying the groove is simple, because it's not, but I just love the way it makes me feel when I listen to it.
The thing about that groove is it is simple, and what makes it work is that when we used to put songs together, Joe and Rick would write, and we'd come together as a band, and we would try and what I would always do is we'd find the tempo of the melody and whatever they came up with, and I would play the simplest thing to go with that. And we would add stuff if it needs it. If it doesn't need it, then don't put it in, And I think that was one of the songs where, it's quite an up-tempo song, but what gives it that kick is that all we did in the chorus is just that we added a 4 on the floor and the kick drum. So suddenly you had that pulse all the way through, which gives you that big lift, but nothing really moves apart from, it's just a simple 4/4 groove, but with a big fat sound and a 4 on the floor kick drum, which, you go back to your sort of Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, Bon Jovi days, and you're always going to have a bit of 4 on the floor, aren't you, to drive songs. And it worked for that song for sure.
I think you're right, and I think this is the thing, and and this is one of the things that Shutty was talking about as well. And he was saying how he learned by watching videos of Phil Rudd from Black Sabbath, and he recorded off the telly, and he learned his 4/4, and he didn't really move away from it, because he said, I didn't need to, because it gave me everything I wanted for everything I want to play. And he did crack me up, because he said there was one bit, they were doing this gig somewhere, and they had this band supporting them. Anyway, the support band had done this sound check, and he went up to him afterwards and he said, "Oh mate, I love what you were playing," and he went, "Oh, I can write it down for you if you want." And he went, "What? You could actually write that down?" He said, "It won't mean anything to me, but thanks."
Mate, it's true though. As a 12, 13-year-old, I had the opportunity for drum lessons at school, and it's probably the biggest regrets of my life in a way, but I became a rebellious, I got into a band at school, and I was 13, 14, I had girlfriends, and suddenly I thought I was a dude and I could play drums. And this drum teacher would turn up with grade 1 music, and he would sit behind you and he'd have your hands like this and have you playing your Coca-Cola and your single stroke rolls. And I was struggling with it, because it's like, he'd tell you off if you had your wrist and he was right. But for me, it just didn't work. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go home and play Bon Jovi songs, and I never really learned to play from a teacher's perspective. And maybe if I did, moving forward, I would have been more inspired to go out and learn a more technical approach and learn the stuff that maybe I missed out on, because I just, I've always loved singer-songwriters and that kind of music where you just want to serve the song, and 95% of those songs are always going to be in 4/4. And for me, it's about the sound and how you project what's in here on to the instrument, you know. And that's followed me through whatever band I've been in over the years. It seems to have worked for me, and I've not really wanted to learn to read, and it's just not been, you know, it's not been for me really. But I've had fun.
Mate, and I think this is it, and you know, other people are going to be listening to this, and they're going to be guys that are learning to play the drums. They're going to be guys that are experienced at playing the drums. They're going to be others that know nothing about drums other than the fact we're talking about it all. You know, there are definitely two different roads, and there is this whole clinical path, you know, of reading tab and all of that. And that's all very well, and I'm, you know, and I get it. I really do get it, because obviously I have to from a
Sure.
teaching point of view. But if you don't have that feel, that spark, the force, I like to call it, and I know that sounds really kind of stupid, but you'll know this because obviously when you've played with Jody and Rick, and when you've played with the other bands you've been in, that magic that happens when you're playing with 2, 3 other guys, and it just, there's nothing like the feeling of that.
Absolutely.
And I think when you have that, that's when you can really appreciate what it's like sticking a fat groove, like you talked about, behind a melody that it needs to be supported. You know?
Absolutely, 100%. And you know, for your kids watching, don't ever be put off by the fact that you shouldn't go and learn to read, because you should if you can do that. But my advice to any kid learning to play drums is, yes, get the drum lessons and learn to read, but go out and listen to music, you know, and listen to music, listen to different types of music, and try and find how those drums are, what those drums are doing, the sounds and the notes to serve that song, to make it fit with the melody and the groove and the riff, because it's a science behind that, you know. And you know, I've seen some guys that are readers, and you see them reading and they're playing, but they're like reading and playing. They're not. It's not coming from here. It's coming from up here. And it's, you can become rigid if you're not careful. And I think, you know, anytime I've tried to sit down and read music, you just find you're very kind of like sucked into this. And I don't like that. I just want to be free and just play drums. And you know, there's a big vocabulary of stuff that I've never been able to learn, and I probably never will. And you know, I kind of wish I explored more as a younger guy. But you know, I've had a great time over the years with some fantastic memories and some great gigs and some brilliant road memories. You know, with the crew and all the stuff that you dream of doing as in a rock and roll band over the last probably 20-25 years. I've had, you know, the honor of being part of it, which is amazing, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
No, mate, that's really cool, and I think we ought to dip into that a little bit. Now I know you obviously were in a band at school, and which was cool, and I know you had some great times, and I know you felt you weren't the best. But I mean,
I wasn't even the best drummer in the band, let alone the best drummer in the, do you know what I mean? It was like, I played as a 14-year-old. We had the band at school, and like even the girl singer could play better than me at the time. And I was like, oh man, what's good? It was so tough, you know, it was really hard, but I just stuck at it and persevered, you know. And it was like, we had to develop really quickly, because suddenly I found myself in a band as a 13, 14-year-old. And then we got to record, and then the band got to a final that we got to perform at like the Academy in Plymouth or somewhere like that, you know. And there was like 2,000 dudes watching us, and you know, I can just about string a 4/4 groove together and get around the kit and know where one is on a good day. And suddenly we're playing in front of 2,000 people, and we came second. You know, we smashed it. And I don't know how. I just followed this path of, I just blagged my way through in the early days, you know. And then the singer, she got a big record deal in America, you know. And suddenly I'm playing in a band, and this girl was like touring around America, and it's like, you know, things can happen, and all these little things were going on through my younger days that were just infectious, and made me want to just keep doing what I was doing, you know. But yeah, there's those early memories. And then I think after the school band, I found myself in Spain for a year playing in a duo. Had a girlfriend. Her dad was a great. This is another great drum lesson of mine. He was we were called Pint and a Half. He was I think well, he was like 50 at the time maybe, and I was 25, something like that, you know. But he had like been on the circuit in London as a used to play with like Shakin' Stevens and Clapton and stuff around the circuit in London before they were signed, and had a big Gretsch
Cool.
guitar, and he would play stuff from the 50s, and just like brilliant music, you know, country and western, the old songs from the shows. And we just got this duo together. We'd play the hotels around Newquay and play to like old people that just loved listening to that. And you know, you're having to play and fill a sound with just a guitar, drums, and I was doing some singing really badly. But it worked, you know. We would tell some jokes between the songs, and we'd get into like Peggy Sue and like all these brilliant rock and roll songs. And that was a great drum lesson. And then that took us on to Spain. So I had a year out there playing in a country and western bar, 7 nights a week residency, you know. And the girl that owned the bar was a bass player for a country band called the Rochelle's in Nashville, and she moved to Spain, so she formed a trio with us. And so I had like 8 months of doing that, and things, you know, things just, they were just amazing times, good times. But I came home after that. I came back, and I think I found another band called Him Jammer, which I was in for a while. And then 2001, 2002, I got hold through a friend of Jodie and Rick, and that's it really. And I spent up until a couple of years ago, that was really the last sort of 15 years of my life. 20 years has been with those guys, you know. And boy, did we have some memories. I mean, the best times, you know, really good times.
Yeah, I mean, and we're talking about good times. I mean, obviously, you know, you've had some really good highlights in your career and things. And I mean, I know you've been on tour with Thunder, and I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that. And I know you've played with Feeder and Jules Holland. You know, there's quite a plethora of people that you've kind of had the opportunity to play for. But for you, what's been the highlight out of, you know, your time behind the kit? What is the thing that's up there on for that golden moment?
Obviously, the Thunder tour was amazing. I mean, that was like the ultimate. 2006, you find yourself doing 2 dates in a sold out arenas in London, their hometown gig in front of 5,000 people. It doesn't get much better than that, you know. When you're sound checking that kit and the engineers like hit the kick drum, and you just like pounding that, and you feel that coming back into an empty arena, and just coming on stage, and mate, I'm so lucky that I've got to experience that. So that's one of the highs. And another big super cool high for me was a couple came out to see the band playing a few times, and he's like, we're getting married next year, can you come and play at our wedding? And we're like, no, we don't really do weddings, we're not a wedding band. He goes, well, it'll be at my uncle's house, and my uncle's Roger Taylor from Queen.
Wow.
And he's got a house, we knew he's got a house down at the Halford, down not far from where I live. So we're like, yeah, okay, then we'll do that, no problem, you know, we'll be there. And you know, true to form, we turn up at Roger Taylor's house with a massive posh marquee, setting our kit up, and then Roger comes over, you know, over my drum kit, and sort of shakes my hand and says, if you've got a mic, I've got to do a speech, you know. And just a super cool dude. And you know, suddenly I'm playing drums in front of Roger watching, and his boy Rufus, he's now the drummer for the Darkness, you know, he was there dancing away, come on, you guys rock, you know. We just played cheesy covers all night. We don't usually do that, but that's what we did. But I think that was pretty cool. I don't think it gets much better.
That's got to be up there. I mean, obviously, you know, Roger Taylor is a Cornish boy, you know, as well, like yourself, like myself. And I said, you know, it's pretty amazing to be able to do that. I mean, again, Shutty was telling me about when he met Roger Taylor and just how he oozed cool, you know, and he just said he just couldn't get over just how cool he was. And he did crack me up because this was before we would hit record, you know, and he said to me, "You think Will Smith is cool? He's got nothing on Roger Taylor."
That's brilliant. Roger had his lovely posh suit on at the wedding, but a pair of white trainers, and I'm like, that ain't cool. I don't know what those trainers are doing, but you know, an absolute cool dude. What a legend. And interestingly, he ended up signing the girl that I said that I was in a band with at school, who ended up going to America. She came back and ended up being Roger Taylor's backing singer and toured with Roger so that's a small world. He would go down the ferry boat down our local, and Trina was there playing, and yeah, so just Cornwall. That's why it's so amazing down here, because everyone knows everyone, and everyone wants to go out and watch live music and go to the coast and go to the beach bars and playing with feeder on the sands in
Yeah.
Perranporth. I mean,
Yeah.
so lucky, so lucky. But there weren't a huge amount of bands doing what we were doing. Even nine, our focus, that nothing short of being a successful signed band and touring the world. It didn't happen to that degree, but we did everything in our power to try and make it happen. And I guess maybe that's why we had some moderate success, because we worked damn hard. We would finish work at lunchtime, get in our blue transit van, drive to London to play a show where somebody might be there from an A&R company. Sometimes we had 4 people at a show. We'd play for 30 minutes and we would drive back to Cornwall, get up for work an hour later. We did that. We did the slogging, the stories that you hear about, to try and make it happen. And maybe, the gigs that we had with the bigger bands were deserved for the effort that we put in. But then so many other bands have put in effort in, and some get success, some slog and get nothing. I feel like we had something to show for it, and amazing times.
I mean, I've seen you play live quite a few times, and I've always been blown away. Every time I've seen you play, I think there was an organic energy from the 3 of you. Obviously, the first time I saw you, there was 4 of you, and then obviously that lineup kind of changed around a little bit. But I remember seeing it when it was the 3 of you singing, and then Jodie took over doing the lead vocals and everything. And I think it was somewhere in Swindon I saw you playing. I think was the first time as a 3, and it was just a different class, in my opinion. I think there was.
Thanks, man.
And I genuinely really loved it, and it really changed my thought train about what I wanted to do as a drummer, because up until that point I was teaching, but I wasn't actively in a band, and it just made me really hungry to want that again. So thank you for inspiring me to push forward and do.
Wow, man.
So thank you for that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. The 4-piece thing, it was tough times, because after the Thunder thing, we cut a record, our first album, and then for whatever reasons, our bass player, he disappeared. He went, and it was short notice. I was on holiday at the time when I found out, and suddenly we had a tour booked, and then the whole thing just got wiped. We had a load of albums and a tour and no band, because he quit on us. And at the time it was like, what's going on? It was probably the biggest low we ever had. It's just when things were getting to that point where, it was going to be amazing. And then so we're like, what do we do? And when we started out in 2001, it was just the 3 of us, and Jody would jam the sessions playing bass. He wasn't really a bass player, but we would get through as a 3-piece, looking to find a bass player eventually. So we took some time out and we started just going back and playing music again. And Jody says, I'm going to go and I'm going to learn to play. I'm going to play bass, I'm going to sing, and I'm going to make it happen. And I remember the first gig we did as a 3-piece, and the energy that we created, and the guys, Joe and Rick, it's hard as a drummer to create that energy that they did, but it was just infectious, and it was just the best thing that ever happened to become a 3-piece back in 2009, I think, and have 10 years as a band playing with that energy and the new stuff and the way that we wrote after that. I mean, it was, really, really lucky. It could have gone the other way, but it didn't, and it worked. And yeah, great times.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. And when Empires came out, obviously the 3rd album that you guys
Yeah.
recorded, and I remember there was a show I was at with one of my friends, and you played one of the songs that was going to be on that. You hadn't told anyone, and I think the song's called Hollow, and I remember hearing it, and I videoed it, because I thought, oh man, I hadn't heard it before, and I wasn't sure if it was one of your own songs, because Jody didn't say, but I loved it, and I remember playing it back and thinking, and I remember I think I messaged you, and you were like, don't share it, don't tell anyone. And obviously it landed on the 3rd record, which is really cool. And when it's on, and I still love that track now, and I have to turn it up in the car. So
oh, cool, man. Yeah, it's another energetic tune. It just served itself. It was one of those songs that just was really easy to put a part to, because the the tempo, the energy, the groove, they just some songs are like that, they just happen really quickly, and that was one of them from memory. Other songs don't. Other songs you think are going to come together really quickly, and you just sit there and, why isn't this working? And it's hard sometimes, the melody and the I don't know, the groove and the guitar parts, they just don't all gel. It's quite a complex thing to making a song come out of its shell, and sometimes those songs that we never put on record because they just didn't ever sound better than the acoustic version, that how they were written in the first place. And to me, if it can't turn an acoustic song into a band song, then probably doesn't deserve to be played as a band. So we've got some songs that were never released that that were really good, but that never happened as a band.
Ah, fair enough. And it's cool to hear that. Have you ever been in a situation where, this has happened to me recently, but so this is pre-COVID, but where you've had a song and you've been working a part out for it, and maybe it hasn't gone quite right, but someone else who isn't a drummer is trying to tell you how to play it or how they hear it in their head. How do you get around that?
Mate, Rick and even Nine, stunning guitar player. You put him behind a drum kit, and honestly, it's like he'll be the first to admit it. He was so funny because he can't play drums for toffee, but in the studio he would like, Shag, I've got this idea. I'm like, oh God, no. And he would have this idea, and he couldn't really demonstrate it without looking like a complete. But so many of his ideas came to fruition when we were recording, and a lot of Rick's drum parts ended up, I played them because I was like, fair enough, But then it works the other way. I can't play guitar, but I can hear stuff sometimes, and I would have said to him, like, maybe we should do that. And sometimes they went that way as well. So yeah, so it's hard sometimes because, like I say, maybe going back to the not studying too much of the Dave Weckl stuff and the vocabulary that the big guys had, there's a little bit of a vocabulary sort of shortage in my brain sometimes. And we're getting older as well, your brain doesn't work so quick as it. These little kids now you see on YouTube, they're 8-9-year-olds, and you're like, that's ridiculous. How do they play like that?
Yeah, they're playing Master of Puppets with a double kick drum, and they're like,
but they've got YouTube, man. They've got YouTube, and they've got all this stuff to watch it from. And then we didn't have any of that, did we? We had none of that stuff. None
of it at all. And it's just insane how accessible. I know we were talking about that earlier on, but that sort of thing is. And this is interesting. I can't remember who I was talking. It was one of my students I was talking to, and then we were talking about different grooves and things, and how to play them and break them down to be able to hear the smaller parts, and there's this one groove, I can't remember exactly what it was now, but he couldn't play it, and he was like, well, Kelv, how do you play that? And I said to him, well, I've never played that groove before, so I'm going to have to go away and learn that myself before I can show you how to play it. And he was like, what? So you can't play everything? And I was like, and it's an interesting concept from a student going, so you're my teacher, but actually you can't, there's some stuff you can't play. What's been the hardest groove or something you've wanted to be able to play that's taken the longest to kind of master? Have you had anything like that in your time?
I think there was some of the stuff that you should be able to play that I think the Foo's Hero from the Foo Fighters, that groove at the start of the song, it's just like big fat. But I decided to put a double kick drum thing with a groove, around the toms at the same time, and that was hard. And I remember we gigged it as a cover song, and I never quite knew whether it was going to come out or not. And I spent hours on the kit behind me, just sitting there with the foot going and playing. I'd stay away from the complex stuff because I've never needed to find that stuff in the music I've done. I've always been a one-trick pony when it comes to a rock drummer, if you like. So there's limits to my vocabulary, and like I said, I've always expressed myself from here and trying to take the notes out to make it work as opposed to putting them in. So sometimes, that was a song that I remember thinking, oh, there's probably been a few. It's usually cover songs that we've done. We put in a set over time, and they'll be like, oh, let's cover that, and I'll be like, oh, really struggling with this, So there's off mine, I can't think, but I'm sure there's plenty, definitely.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So in thinking about present day and with all the stuff you're playing on your awesome kit, which we're going to talk about in a minute,
I'll give you a little tour in a minute.
Yeah, mate. No, I'd love a tour of the kit. That'd be really cool. It'd be great to show everyone who's going to watch this.
Yeah, yeah.
When you so obviously with some of the covers that you're doing at the moment, and I saw the Lost Highway video that you did at the weekend, which I loved, by the way. And interestingly enough, I'm slightly sidetracked here, but that is John Bon Jovi's favourite Bon Jovi album. And I don't get that because it's got some good stuff, but it's not as good as Slippery or New Jersey or Keep the Faith.
Sure. I think we saw them on that tour, and they were talking about that album, and I think there's a lot of stuff happened. I think a lot of them lost parents and stuff. I think Dave Bryan lost his dad during the recording of that album. I think spiritually it meant a lot to them. I think it's quite a somber kind of the way that ended up being recorded, and I think there was quite some low points within the band as well. So I think maybe it meant a lot to him from that point of view. I remember him talking about it live and sort of saying, "It's a great album, very underrated album." But they went down a country route, I think, slightly more with that album. You know, you lost that kind of. I think John's voice wasn't as strong as what it had been, and I think they're trying to discover new sounds. But that's a great song to play. That was just. I don't try and find songs to cover that test me as a musician or drummer. Maybe I should. I just find cool songs. It doesn't matter whether they have a simple groove or what. It's just songs they're all songs that inspired me growing up. Every song I choose has a meaning, you know, whether it's something from the 80s. I did a Blondie song in the early days when I put the wig on. Yeah. You know, I was just reminiscing over time and finding songs that just inspire me to play. And it's exciting putting these little videos together, you know, setting up some camera angles, getting the sounds, bit of editing after, putting them on your YouTube channel and seeing if you get some, you know, what sort of comments you get. It's all good fun, isn't it? Keeps you busy.
It does, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, I'm obviously like yourself. I love all the big fat rock drums and all that sound. But I tell you, a guy who I really think is underrated as a drummer, like currently, is Will Champion from Coldplay. And he's not actually a drummer of choice, as in he didn't choose to play the drums. They needed someone, and he filled in, and they just liked what he did, so they kept him. But there's a couple of their songs, and I just think the simplicity of what he plays, which is what we've been talking about, just sounds absolutely magic. And there's a song that I did a video of called White Shadows, which is off the album X and Y, and I just love that really driving floor tom through the song, and it just sounds absolutely just magic when you got it right, you know.
Yeah, totally. I love Will's playing. You know, Coldplay, the first two albums were stunning albums, and when they sold out and went to the pop to fill stadiums, I lost my way with them a bit. But yeah, again, someone that just serves the songs. I mean, Will, you know, sit there, you've seen the videos of them making their albums, and he doesn't have to be playing drums. Sometimes it's how they program parts, because a lot of the stuff is programmed. But you know, that's his musical brain working. It's like, do I need to be on this record, or will it sound better if they use a sound from a drum machine, or should I sit there and try and play it live on the drum machine? Things like that. That he's a very clever drummer and musician, and there's plenty of great groove players out there. Ash Stone is my favorite drummer from the last few years. I mean, yeah, in the early days he played with Delamitri, but I discovered him when he was on The Voice. Started following him on Instagram and stuff. But that guy, just what he does with a groove, it's just unbelievable. That's a drummer that makes me move, and someone that makes you do that when you're listening to them. To me, is you know, that's what it's all about.
That's really cool. I like, because I'm obviously all about trying to find new drummers, because it's as cool as it is loving the guys like Chad Smith, who is my absolute drum guru and has been ever since I started playing. And you know, you're talking about Tico being one of yours, you know, and Weckl and those sort of guys. But actually, there are a new breed of drummers coming through that are doing all this kind of hybrid stuff, and they're playing with loops, and they're using those, you know, those Roland square drum pads, you know, the things that they like. So for me, one of the drummers that I love at the moment is Josh Dunn from 21 Pilots.
21 Pilots, yeah, I've been checking their stuff out recently. Some cool stuff there, really good.
But what I love about him as a drummer is how he keeps his grooves. He plays some complicated parts, don't get me wrong, but actually they're really solid, and they have purpose to the song, like we've been talking about tonight.
Sure.
but at the same time, he manages to add the other bits in as well. So not only is he playing some amazing like 16th notes on the kick drum and dropping them in here and there, and they sound absolutely killer, and I love it. But he's managing to trigger other sounds off of off a sound pad at the same time, because obviously there are only two of them. I mean, have you ever thought about how that would work in a live setup for you? Would that be something would you ever consider anything like that? I mean, I don't know if
I don't know, mate. There's this thing with, for me, e-drums over the last 10 years have served a massive part of my life because it was such a great tool for rehearsals. If you're a band that you have to take a PA in a van and a drum kit to a village hall to set up to do a rehearsal, it's all a part of the story, isn't it? But it's a faff, man. So, back in maybe 2007, 2006, I got a Yamaha DT Express 3, one of rubber solid pads. Bloody awful thing, really. But we didn't have to set gear up. We could just rehearse in my house, And from then I went on to a Roland TD12, which suddenly had the mesh heads. And suddenly it's like, oh, this sound is good, And it made the rehearsals more inspiring. And then I became a fan. And suddenly I was like, oh, I'm liking this stuff. I'm liking Roland gear. And then they brought out the TD30 when I had the TD12 and this big chrome rack, which is what is the bones of what I've got now. And that's when I became a fan of that kind of stuff. Now, for me, it's still about using that technology at home in a rehearsal, self-indulgent way but I'm not going to say that I never will. At this point, I don't think I would take the SPDX is a great tool, right? I mean, you see so many bands using the SPDX to trigger loops and clicks and stuff like that. I don't trust a cable, You pull that cable out and you're in the middle of a song and that click goes, you're like, So I love, I've got a massive kit of electronic stuff behind me, and it's an indulgent infatuation of the love of drums. That's what I love. As a kid, I would draw pictures of drums, I'd make models of drums, and it was a dream to have. That's a piece of furniture as well as to look at for me. That's why I've got such expensive drums with triggers in them that it's stupid, but that's how it works, But I don't know. There's something about playing live and having just your 4-piece acoustic set up with real cymbals, and when you make a mistake on a drum, you don't hit it right, you haven't hit it right, whereas a triggered drum, it would cover that mistake up. And I'm not there yet, mate. I don't know when.
No, it's cool. I love talking to you about stuff like this, because the people I talk to, they're all quite split about where they sit in which camp, and I suppose I'm a little bit, I've got splinters really, because I've got a foot in each camp, and I mean, I can see the benefit of all the triggers because your sound is going to be the same all the time. So you never, like you'll go into a venue and it's got a really low ceiling, and your bass drum is just bouncing off the walls, not physically, but the sound is, and it sounds dog awful. Or you're going into another room and it's really, really long, and the snare just is taking over everything else.
That's part of the romance, though, isn't it? Of like a touring band, like turning up, and you turn up to a bad room, or you turn up, you've got a bad drum kit where the head's split, and you travel 500 miles to get there, and suddenly the house kit is like got a head missing, the cymbals are cracked, and you're just like, oh man, but you somehow make it work, So I'm going to argue that point because I don't know, but I'll say this now: when I put a song in my ears and I play along to it, there's nothing that makes me smile than being behind that kit and having that technology now to make that happen. And as I've progressed through my electronic gear over the times, and I've spent some stupid money, not that I can afford it, but I have spent money because that's what I live for. So I've got myself the best sounding kit you can buy, so I can sit with a smile on my face and play along to these songs and feel like I'm in a studio that's had the best drum kit mixed by the best engineer and whatever band I want to be in, and I can lose myself in that. But that's, to me, still is where it ends. I still want to go out and play in a rock and roll band with an acoustic kit.
Mate, it's all good. It's all good. You got nothing. You haven't got to justify anything to me. But I can remember we had a conversation. This is a few years ago now.
Oh
And I
yeah, I
remember,
know. I
yeah,
know.
you remember the conversation, and I
Yeah, I
was
do.
telling you about triggers and stuff like that. Oh man, I don't want to deal with that shit. What's that all about?
Got
Nah,
my
nah.
Roland. Nah, I don't need that. Don't need that.
I
It
don't
was
want to be.
lockdown though. It was the pandemic and lockdown. It was like I loved making models as a kid, right? And just as the pandemic hit, I had these drums at home. I couldn't do anything with them, and I was like, "Hang on a minute, I've got this rack here, and I've got these acoustic drums." And then the cog started ticking. It's like, well, how can I give myself a project during lockdowns? This so the next thing I've got like all these mesh heads and triggers and all this stuff turning up from Joe Becky, who are an absolutely amazing company, by the way. And they just they sent me this stuff down, and I built this kit up and sold the Roland pads, put the lovely acoustic drums on the rack, and I've never looked back, mate, because you just immerse yourself in the most amazing playing experience. You know, you've got the same kit at home, you got an electronic kit, full size
Yeah,
shells,
yeah.
and anyone that argues that you shouldn't turn an acoustic kit into an electronic kit, just try it, because when you sit behind your little Roland pads, they're lovely and the technology is great, but you never feel like you're playing a drum kit. And you
And
know,
mate, I could not agree with you more. And I mean, obviously, you've got an amazing Roland TD50 with a few adaptions back there, which we are going to go and look at in a minute. But I mean, I play a D drum hybrid, so my triggers are all built into the shells, like you've got. And I run mesh heads on mine, so they're Remo silent strokes, so they're designed for that low noise. But I run Zildjian Gen 16s on my kit, so they've got their like perforated like a tea bag, loads and
sure,
loads of little small holes in them. So you still got that really natural feel, but what you've got is you've got that you haven't got that massive noise that comes from playing with proper cymbals, if you like,
sure,
as,
sure.
as we know, which allows me to play in the studio. So, but what I did try and do, and this has been working for me since I've done a few of the videos, nowhere near to the standard you've done yours. But I use this dynamic mic I'm using now, and that makes my cymbals sound absolutely lush. They just sound
Mm-hmm.
so good, and like you're saying about how good things sound in your headphones, when you're playing. That for me, as what that's done, it's changed me as a drummer, I think, as well. It's allowed me
Cool.
to change and develop. So you're saying about how you've developed, it's the same thing, and I think this is just what's just so cool about playing drums.
Absolutely. That's why we do it, mate, isn't it? At the end of the day, we just want to play drums and smile, and
Yeah,
and whether you've got your little Yamaha electronic kit or you've got, it doesn't matter. It's about what makes you smile, and that's the best advice I could give to any kid watching is
nice.
learn to love the space between the notes and learn to smile when you play. And if you get those two things, I think you're halfway there. You've got to enjoy it.
You have, mate. You have. You've got to enjoy it. Right, let's have a look at this really tasty bit of hardware you've got behind you, then, fella.
Oh,
So,
let me
are
see if
you
I can
able? Are
do
you able?
this.
Yeah. So let's have a little chat. So obviously,
Okay.
this is so it's your. So what's the skeleton of it then? So obviously, I know you got that chrome rack you were talking about, but what are your shells made up of? What are they?
So the shells are Pearl Reference. Can you see
Right.
that?
Yeah, that's great, mate.
So the
I
Pearl
love that.
Reference shells,
Nice finish on it too.
yeah, they're like birch, maple, and mahogany. So as the shells get deeper, they doesn't really matter because they've got triggers on them. So I don't know what I'm talking about, what the shells are made out of. But as acoustic drums, they're stunning because they've got like I say, the darker wood with the bigger shells. So basically, it's a TD30 kit originally. The pads have gone. I've kept the rack, kept the cymbals, added a few more Joe Becky cymbals, but I put the Joe Becky triggers. If you can see it from that angle, how does that
Yeah,
look?
yeah,
Can
that
you?
looks, mate. That's amazing. I mean,
So
it just makes you want to sit behind it.
exactly, and that's it is. It's exactly the same setup as what I would have in a studio, but I've got a few more cymbals than what I'd have in the studio. I've got an SPDX with a cover on over there, and the Roland TD50 brain. But yeah, basically that's you can see that is I've got a Roland pad that I've kept there as well. Far too
Yeah,
many drums for me, to be honest, but they all make lovely sounds.
yeah, but it's cool though because kind of what you've done. So I was watching. We were talking about Coldplay earlier on, and I watched their gig that they did from Whitby Cathedral a few weeks ago. That was part of Radio One's big weekend. Oh, have we disappeared? Oh no, we're back.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and I was looking at World Champions kit because they had a few shots like from behind the back of him because of the way they had it set up, and he literally had his acoustic kit in front of him, and then to one side of it, well, I can't remember whether it was his right or his left, but he had some Roland the TD30
Yeah, yeah.
pads as well, and I thought this is becoming more of a thing now. I mean, I think there's always been a few drummers which have experimented having a bit of both. You take I can't think of his name now, but the guy from Rush,
Neil Peart.
that's it, mate. I couldn't just lost his name.
One of my idols as a kid.
Fair enough. And you think about his 360-degree kit that he had, and everything. But he was one of those guys that kind of experimented with having a bit of both. But it is becoming a bit more normal now, isn't it?
The Who, Zach Starkey toured the last big tour they done, stadium tour. He had electronic drums. They were all. It's like that set up. You wouldn't know it, but they were all, which I was really surprised at, because you think the Who, you want that proper Mooney sort of
stripped back rock and roll.
Exactly, but they were proper triggered drums, and I was like, there's a lot of stuff, your R&B stuff that you watch on the telly. They have, it works. You're trying to replicate the studio sound, and to be fair with Coldplay, their studio sound is more and more electronic, isn't it? The drums probably aren't world champion, are they? So if they're trying to take that to the live show, then you can understand why he's introducing pads and stuff.
Yeah, I just think it's amazing. I just think that it's just opening up a whole new dimension in drums.
Sure.
In drums,
even really. We experimented with triggers. A few of the songs we had loops in the studio that we would put underneath live drums, but we never took it. That's when you would think about an SPDX pad now, and if you doing anything in the future, whether you play to the click and you trigger those loops behind you. I don't know. Do I want to do it? Maybe one day.
It's interesting because I heard an interview with Taylor Hawkins. This is back in February time when their new album Medicine at Midnight came out, and on Apple Music they had over a few weeks they had interviews with the band members, and I'd listened to the one with Dave Grohl, and there was one with Pat Smear, which was really cool listening to kind of him. But I really wanted to hear the Taylor Hawkins one, so I wanted, and he was going on about the fact there's a couple of tracks on that album which have got drum loops on. So when he was talking through it, he said, Dave was really pushing him to play and incorporate these drum loops on these songs. And he said, it's all very well, but how am I going to do it live? Because I don't want to have triggers and cables and stuff when we're on stage. And I'm not going to tell you what Dave Grohl said to him, but it was
what did he say?
It was literally, you haven't got a choice. You are going to do it.
See, that's what I love about Foos, because they are a proper rock and roll band. They don't have clicks live, we're not robots. We speed up and we slow down, and that's what I love about watching bands that just go out there with, like even Nine did, with that sound. It fluctuates, but we're human beings, and you want to feel that. Look at the Who, man. Look at Mooney. I mean, how he played, and Ginger Baker. These guys are the best inspirational drummers on the planet, but
yeah.
Ringo Starr, they're great inspirational drummers, but they're all over the place with their tempos. But it doesn't matter, because they had infectious songs, and it was just, that's what it's all about to me. So I can understand why Taylor wouldn't want to take a. We're going to run in circles with this, aren't we?
It just made me laugh. The whole thing is like, no, I'm just not having anything to do with it. I don't want anything to do with it. And I just thought it just cracked me up. I thought, yeah, good on you, stick with it. But it's interesting how, Dave Grohl being a drummer as well, kind of his thought process through that, and thinking we maybe need to incorporate that to make them more successful with this new record that's coming out, that's out, and it is an amazing record, and I love it.
Yeah.
Exceptionally brilliant, But it's that whole thing, isn't it? I mean, I was talking to Bob Richards the other day, so I don't know if you're
as you do,
yeah. Just drop that into conversation. I was talking to Bob, and it was really funny because we were having this conversation about he was one of the first bands he played in. They were based in Salisbury, so he was hiking up from Newport to go and rehearse with this band, and they said to him about, we're going to go in the studio and we're going to record this album, but he used to play. I'd take a double bass out with him, so he had 2 kick drums and everything. They wouldn't let him have it in the studio. They would not let him have a double bass drum in the studio. So he's like, well, I want to keep that part in because it's what makes the song for me as a drummer. So do you know what he did? He played the double bass drum part as a separate track on his floor toms on the album because they made him take it out. And then when they played it live, and obviously he had his double bass drums, he could play it as he wanted to.
Yeah, cool, dude.
Mate, amazing. But it's that sort of stuff. It's all those little things that are just, I find quite fascinating. You know, how all those little stories that come out about how different drummers approach different things, you know?
Sure. Quick story.
Go for it.
My first gig with Scarlet Rage as a 13, 14-year-old on the stage. And we played our first song, and it was Starship. Nothing's going to stop us now, something like that. First chorus, playing along, stick comes flying out of my hand, and I'm like, oh no, you feel the blood sinking. You've got like 250 of your mums and dads watching your first concert, and there's me thinking I'm this dude, and suddenly I've got and I don't know what to do. I've never, what do I do? So I get off my stool, in the middle of the song, in the middle of the stage, I walk across, and you can see my drumstick rolling towards the end of the stage, about to fall off. And I grabbed it, and I came back behind the kit, and I carried on playing, totally out of time. And I think that moment there is where I could turn around and just sort, this ain't for me, and walk away from it. So the story is, from that point onwards, for about 6 years, I would take my index finger to the drumsticks with sellotape, and to this day now, I wrap my sticks in like Promark grip tape, because I still have that in the back of. It's like Southgate missing a penalty in '96, isn't it? And like, it lives with him. That lives with me every time. So now it's like I even have to have grip tape because I've got that subconscious thing of like, and the sticks go flying. I've hit some spectators watching our gigs and they've just gone flying, but now I can just deal with it. Just pick another one up. But that's a funny story. That's one of my little quirks that's lived with me all through my drumming career.
I love stuff. Mate, I do love stuff like that. It's just, but that's what makes us human, and that's what brings us all back down to kind of reality, really, with what we're doing. And this is why it's great talking to you now about this, because you've invested time into your craft, money into your craft, but you do it for the love of it. And this is what these podcasts are all about. They're all about the love of drums, whether it be playing them, working hard, gigging, whether it be being a roadie for somebody and setting someone's kit up so it's the same every night, or whether it be the guy that does that custom paint job and puts those shells together, or whether it's the guy that just happens to rock up and be asked to go and play for AC/DC, and it's all a bit of a surreal experience. We're all a part of the same world in our own way. And it's just amazing. That Bob Richards story is great, and I will tell you that at some point. It's so funny how that all happened for him. But it's just, and again, it's like how I met him. That was a complete, just a moment in time that was never planned. It just kind of happened. So, and I did this. We did this. There was a concert in Cirencester, which is just up the road from where I live, and it was in tribute to Cozy Powell, because that's where he was born. And they did one of those blue plaque things, like they did for Jimi Hendrix in London. They've done it for loads of other, stuck on, and it's on the wall outside of the town hall. Anyway, we were invited to go to this do because we were part of the local music scene, and with everything we were doing, so that was cool. Brian May's there doing all the introductions and everything, which is like, and he's literally about 3 feet away from me. So that in itself was quite amazing. And you had Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, and you had, Susie Quattro was there, and you had Carl Palmer from Asia, Neil Murray from Whitesnake was there. All these guys were just there, and they were just roaming around like it was just another day, And there was this kit. This kit was set up. It was a Yamaha kit, just like I used to have, a Yamaha Stage Custom. Set up exactly the same, everything. And then next to it was Cozy Powell's Stargazer kit. The big chrome kit with the double bass drums?
Amazing.
Mate, sick as. It just looked immense. And there was this guy just stood in the background, just like, arms folded, just chilling, just, looking around at what was going on. Anyway, I asked this guy, Chris Allen, who had done this learned this tribute to Cozy for this thing. Afterwards, I said, "Oh, mate, can I have a go on your kit?" And he was like, "Yeah, all right, go and have a go." So I went up and I just started playing. I just went into this little groove and I was in my own little world. And I was like, "Yeah, man, this sounds cool in here because it's a big hall. Everything was sounding amazing." And then next to me, this almighty thunderous kept going on. And I look over to my left-hand side, and there's Bob Richards behind the back of this Cozy kit, absolutely giving it some welly.
Amazing.
Oh, mate. And I tell you what, it was just blew me away. And if nothing ever happened to me more than that in my lifetime from a drumming point of view, I would be very, very happy. But off the back of that, you know, we've built up a little bit of a rapport because obviously the video that was done at the time, that's kind of gone out into the ether, you know, and it's had a few hits on YouTube and stuff like that. And it's really cool. And the fact that Bob was happy to come and do one of these like you're doing tonight is just incredible. So, and I love that because that's what this is all about. It's reaching out to the audience who want to listen and hear those stories and know what it's like, and just about the fun and enjoyment that drumming can bring to you, you know?
Sure, definitely. And you know, quickly, the whole last 16 months during lockdown, we all became the same, you know. It doesn't matter whether you're John Bon Jovi or you're whoever, you know, it doesn't matter what level you're at. We were all stuck at home, trying to express ourselves musically. You know, whether you're famous, whether you're just starting out, you know, it made you realize that we are just all equal people, and we all have a story to tell, you know, and that's what music's about. And like you say, it doesn't matter how good or where you are with your career, how you are with your talent, how many memories you have, as long as you can get behind your kit and smile and play and enjoy it, then that's all that matters, you know. But it's good to create some history and good to create some stories. And yeah, I'm super happy with our past for sure.
Mate, it's awesome. And I think, you know, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I mean, I always enjoy talking to you, Brett, because we always go off into different directions. But I genuinely love you for that because it's just awesome. Mate, you. I so appreciate you giving up some time tonight to chat about everything to do with drums. And maybe we ought to do another one, but maybe let's make it a bit more specific next time and kind of choose something we want to make our podcast about. Maybe, I don't know. Let's have a little think about that. But
yeah, totally, man.
That could be quite good. That could be quite, maybe what we do for our next one is perhaps with your kit, we could look at that and some of the things that you do with that in order for generating your videos. Maybe that'd be quite cool. That'd be a cool angle, wouldn't it?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do it.
Wicked. Well, let's set that up. We'll get on the blower in a minute once we've stopped recording, and we'll do that. I think that'd be amazing.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right, dude. Look, you look after yourself and you stay safe, bud. And I will speak to you very, very soon. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.